The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday, May 8th. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week. We are going to cover the news. News just doesn't stop flowing in, so we'll take on the news today. And we'll start with the fact that I know many of you are celebrating, but we have a new pope. The white smoke came out of that chimney thing that they construct during the enclave, whatever. And we got a new pope. And not only is it a new pope, it's an America first new pope, right? It's the first American pope. Pretty amazing. I'm sure Donald Trump is fully 100% taking credit for this. But Cardinal Robert Prevost has become the first American pope ever. He spent most of his time in Peru and then has been an official at the Vatican, I guess, for the last decade or so, 2 decades, whatever. As Ryan says, while it's in the news, should anybody care? So we've got a new witch doctor. We have a new witch doctor appointed by the cardinals, a bunch of witch doctors, to oversee the witch doctor empire emanating out of Rome. A bunch of people are now going to go literally kiss the ring, I guess. And he is going to now declare, infallible that he is, what the truth actually is, and what Catholic doctrine actually is, because only he can declare that. It might contradict previous popes' declared doctrine, and they were infallible too, but don't let 21st century popes, don't let contradictions bother you. That is not just true on the postmodern left, it's also true on the postmodern Catholic, post-ancient, it's not even modern, Catholicism. Anyway, this is a barbaric institution. It's hard for me to understand why it still exists. You would think that the child sex scandals would have eviscerated the Catholic Church and ended its reign. Counter that seems to only grow. It seems to only grow and gain more influence. All right, are we back? Let's see. All right, I think we're back. I think that was a message from God. That was a message directly from God saying, stop bashing my church. If you're going to bash my church, I'm going to freeze you. I'm going to literally freeze you in what do you call it, internet space. Whew, that was scary. I'm starting to believe there's been divine intervention. Anyway, I was going to say, time to abolish this church, trying to get rid of Catholicism, time to get rid of religion. It ain't happening. We have to live with it. The Pope has sway over 1.3 billion Catholics, 21st century or not. It's just not Father Yaron, Father or Bishop Yaron. I want a promotion. We live in the 21st century, and the witch doctors is just growing in power, I fear. The witch doctors might change, they might reformat, they might revise. I'm actually, as I'm saying this about Catholics, I'm watching video from yesterday's Intifada Revolution at Columbia University, and I think witch doctors, as I watch all these Columbia University students putting on their kafirs, which is their I guess, the modern religious symbol but primarily they're putting on the keffiyehs to cover their faces because they don't want themselves to be identified. But they've got these keffiyehs on. It's like carrying a cross. It's a symbol of, I don't know, a symbol of affiliation with a particular church. This is the church of Hamas, the church of the Palestinians, a very oppressed people, and for no good reason, of course. And yesterday we had at Columbia University, we had a protest, and then the protesters basically stormed into the library and barricaded themselves in one of the reading rooms in the library. And there's video of them, all with their keffiyehs, with their religious dress on, documenting their heroism, their cowardice. And, the two Columbia Universities credit, and maybe this is the consequence of the the consequence of the Trump administration's basically sanction of Columbia University, that Columbia University actually got tough last night. 80 students were arrested. And now we will see what the university, if they are students indeed, what the university actually does about all of this. This is after Columbia University basically gave in on the Trump administration's demands. And part of those demands were to get tough on the protesters. We saw the first action last night. Now, again, it's going to be interesting who is going to be next. What is going to be next? That is, what is done with these actual students? Does the university punish them? Does the university do what it did in the past, which is basically nothing? And whether the police will charge them, right? So they've been arrested. Will they be charged? Will they be brought to trial? On what grounds? I mean, they're clearly trespassing, but for the trespassing to hold, Columbia University, I think, has to be a party to the complaint. Will Columbia University do that? So this will be a great case because to the extent that Columbia actually stands up to these Palestinian protesters, given that Columbia led the country in the last round of protests, there's a good chance that this will be the end of the protests. I mean, this movement will slowly die because they don't actually want to go to jail. Maybe there are a few that don't mind going to jail, but I think the bulk of the people in these protests are just hanging out. They have no idea what they're doing. So it's going to be interesting. The movement is the protest yesterday was demanding full financial divestment from Zionist occupation, apartheid, and genocide. So they want them to cut off all relations to Israel. This is, of course, also finals week. So universities are going on summer break. Last year, if you remember, this was occurring in all universities, not all universities, a lot of universities around the country. It was a big problem, and it was basically Columbia was letting it happen. So a big change from a year ago in terms of demonstrations, and part of that, no question, is a consequence of the fact that the Trump administration has basically told the universities that it will hold them accountable if they let these demonstrations run rampant. And the universities are taking that to heart. Not only is Columbia's funding, some of its funding being cut, they had to cut a deal with the government. They had to compromise on a bunch of things. They've got a couple of departments that are kind of in limbo and under now supervision. No university wants to go through what Columbia has just gone through. So it's going to be interesting. Whether these students will be penalized or kicked out of the university, that is going to be the real test. But part one, the fact that they were arrested, that's a thumbs up. That's definitely a good step in the right direction. Good step in the right direction. It's sad that they're doing this under a threat, basically from the federal government. That is sad. But it is happening. All right. So that is Colombia. I mean, the pictures from the library are pretty scary. You've got dozens of these people, faces covered, kafirs on their heads. Can't tell if they're men or women. They just got the kafirs. They look like a convention of collectivists. But now they're sitting in jail somewhere. Talk about universities. Harvard and the Trump administration are still butting heads. Harvard had these two commissions deployed. One to study anti-Semitism at Harvard, and one to study Islamophobia at Harvard. That is, one to study how do Jewish students feel about the anti-Jewish bias at Harvard University, and then how do the Muslim students feel about how they're being treated at Harvard University. And the results were really interesting. I'm looking for the exact quote. One second. Let me just see if I can find it. That's not that. I had it here. God, where did it go? It was really, here it is. So the committee tasked with investigating anti-Semitism found that Israeli and Jewish students were indeed faced with alienating and hostile atmosphere and were, quote, subject to social stigma, exclusion, bias teaching, harassment, and overt pressure to disavow Israel. So the anti-Semitism committee found that there's real harassment going on, there's real bias, and there's actual pressure to change their mind, and they've been excluded, alienated, and it's a hostile environment against them at Harvard University. The Islamophobia Commission found that Arab and Muslims students feel physically unsafe on campus, at least more physically unsafe than minorities or other groups on campus. That they felt like they were abandoned and there was silencing. So the Muslims had a lot of feelings. The Jews were being harassed. There were all these, I guess, microaggressions against Muslims, and there were real aggressions against Jews. And of course, Islamophobia is such a ridiculous term. What does Islamophobia mean? It means fear of Islam or fear of Muslims. Yeah, there are lots of contexts in which fear of Islam and fear of Muslims is justified. I mean, they kill people in the name of Islam. They kill people in the name of their religion. They commit suicide and kill people in the name of their religion. They harass Jewish students and occupy buildings. So maybe these Arab students should think about why other students are afraid of them. What is it about their religion that causes fear? And if they want to combat so-called Islamophobia, maybe what they should do is maybe articulate the case of why people shouldn't be afraid of them, why they are not the kind of Muslims that blow people up, that they're not the kind of Muslims that harass, take over buildings, and think Hamas, who tortures and rapes and burns babies alive. Maybe they are not the kind of Muslims that adore Hamas. Maybe the fact that they're out there chanting pro-Hamas slogans is a good reason to be afraid of them. Fear can indeed be rational. Fear of some people can be rational if those people give you a reason to fear them. And sympathy to Hamas, sympathy to terrorists, is a rational reason to fear. So, there is real anti-Semitism at Harvard, as there are in a lot of these universities. At the universities, the anti-Semitism is almost all from the left. In, I think, the rest of America, the anti-Semitism is primarily from the right. But in intellectual circles, the anti-Semitism is primarily from the left. This commission found that anti-Semitism does indeed exist at Harvard and is a real problem. In response, of course, or not in response, but this was at about the same time as the government started going after Harvard and demanding that Harvard change many of its programs, admissions, and report to the government what kind of students they're bringing in from or admitting from overseas. It required some changes to the curriculum, and so on. This has been escalated now. Harvard basically said, no, we're not gonna listen to the government. We're not gonna do what the government tells us. We are a private school. We will determine our own fate. As a consequence of that, the Trump administration has threatened to withdraw financing. And then earlier this week, the Secretary of Education, Linda McCone, who is well known in the world for her senior executive position in the World Wrestling Federation or something like that. Highly qualified to be Secretary of Education. Anyway, she wrote a 3-page letter to Harvard alleging that Harvard is engaged in a systematic pattern of violating federal law. This is Article 6 of the Civil Rights Act. And as a consequence of these violations, the federal government is going to withdraw all funding from Harvard. In addition, she had a whole list of grievances. She thinks it's ridiculous that Harvard is offering an introductory math course, that it's embarrassing, that it's remedial math. Why is it any business of the federal government if Harvard is offering a remedial math problem, remedial math issue? She listed the resignation of Claudia Gay for plagiarism, the supposed discrimination by the Harvard Law Review against white authors, and just a whole list of grievances that the government has against them and the withdrawal of funding. Anyway, it's going to be interesting because this will go to the courts, more stuff for the courts to do. Harvard is suing, claiming that the government does not have the authority to do this. This money has been appropriate to Harvard. The government cannot discriminate against Harvard based on Trump's political agenda. I don't know how that'll play in the courts. We can ask Larry about that. Another one of the legal cases we can ask Larry Salzman on Saturday about. But Harvard will fight this, and Harvard, from what I've heard, Harvard has a good chance of winning the legal case. But think about what this does to other universities. Most universities cannot fight the federal government. They don't have the resources, the time to dedicate to a lawsuit against the federal government. Most universities are going to fold. They're going to capitulate, as Columbia did. And I think a lot of universities are going to do this preemptively. Now, some of that will be good, arresting students who are clearly, trespassing, violating or harassing students, or just violating the rules of the university. But, it's also going to be interesting to see how else universities shift. Are they going to For example, invest in viewpoint diversity. Viewpoint diversity. There seems to be some move in that direction, which would be a big positive. To replace DEI, some people are advocating for this idea of viewpoint diversity, which conservatives have been talking about for a long time. And supposedly at some universities, this is starting to happen. We will see. We will see. Universities are, you might see, in a sense, a positive effect happening in universities from the Trump administration. I don't think what the Trump administration is doing is good or right, and I think it's very dangerous because who knows how future administrations will use this power. But the reality is that it could have a positive effect on some universities in the sense of getting them to do things they should have been doing anyway, like clamping down on some of these demonstrations and increasing, call it viewpoint diversity. There should be a better word. It should be a better term for that. I need to think of something better for that. But yeah. All right. So today we got an announcement of the first big trade deal. Yes. Clap, cheer. It's exciting. It's thrilling. We got a trade deal with the United Kingdom, between the United States and the United Kingdom. We'll talk in a minute about how big of a deal this is and whether it's a good trade deal, bad trade deal, whether it's even a trade deal at all so far. But before that, I thought it was really, really interesting that, just to give you a sense again about Trump's attitude towards trade, because I think this is the context in which you have to understand that he does these deals. It's within a context of a particular attitude towards trade. This is what he said today. He was asked about the dramatic decline in traffic at the port today. And he basically said, when you're saying it slowed down, the traffic at the port, he said, that's a good thing. Not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Trump hates trade, or at least he hates us buying stuff from other countries, from people in other countries. We lose less money, he says, right? So, so that is the context on which to understand any trade deal that he does. He does not believe that imports have any value. He says, we're losing less money. And China is making 1.1 trillion off of us. That's the amount of money we paid them for the goods. And now we're saving 1.1 trillion. That's a overall good thing. And business is going to be better off. Everybody's going to be better off because we're not buying stuff from we talked about this yesterday. Like, if I stop buying stuff from the grocery store, I'm better off. I've got more money in my pocket. This is so cool, right? If I stop buying stuff, I just stop buying. I'll have more money. Why didn't I think of this? God, I'll have more money in my pocket, in my bank account. I can save. For what? So I have more money. What will I do with the money? Oh, no, you can't use the money because every time you use the money, you're giving money to somebody else. They're ripping you off. You're subsidizing them. You don't get anything in return. So I don't know what we're supposed to eat. I don't know how we're supposed to live. I'm not sure what the purpose of money is if it's not to consume. But I guess it's okay if you consume it from other American citizens. I mean, I'm talking about passport-carrying, full-fledged, real Americans. Money's okay to spend on Americans. Just don't spend it on those foreigners. Don't spend money on foreigners. That is damn evil. That is a waste. As soon as you spend it on foreigners, it means you're subsidizing them, you're giving it to them. It's not good. I mean, yeah, that's Donald Trump's understanding of trade. Anyway, today we have a trade deal with the UK. Now, it's not a deal yet. It's the framework for the deal. And it's it's really interesting because based on this framework, we American consumers, I mean, we basically have gotten screwed. Now, it's true that, there are two parties that benefit from this deal. Exporters, American exporters to the UK, a very small population, very, very small group of people, who now will be able to sell more into the UK because as part of this deal, I guess average tariffs have gone down from 5.1% to 1.8%. American goods going into the UK. And now, this is according to Trump, a tweet by Trump. Now, American goods like ethanol, beef, cereals, fruits, vegetables, animal feed, tobacco, soft drinks, shellfish, textiles, chemicals, machinery, and more will have lower tariffs and greater access to the UK. So people in those industries will be doing well. So that's good, right? So the UK has lower tariffs on American goods and done away with some non-tariff trade barriers, right? That's good. What about if you want to buy something for the UK? Well, that's no good. You're not supposed to buy stuff from foreigners. You can't buy stuff from foreign people. Stop that. Really? Who do you think you are? You unpatriotic, horrible person. So Trump is going to fix that for you. And whereas before Liberation Day, tariffs on average of goods coming from the UK into the United States, according to Trump, were 3.4%. I think they were actually lower. They are now 10%. So you're still going to pay 10% on all stuff coming in from the UK. Trump does not believe in zero tariffs, even as part of a trade deal. And he does not believe in unilateral tariffs. Not unilateral tariffs, what do I mean? Reciprocal tariffs. He does not believe in reciprocal tariffs. Because if he believed in reciprocal tariffs, we should be tariffing UK goods at the same rate they tariff our goods, which is about 1.8%. Instead, we're going to be paying 5 times as much tariffs, 3 times as much as we paid before Trump liberated us on Liberation Day. So American consumers got screwed by this deal. UK gets a discount for buying American stuff, and we pay more. I mean, that's the deal. Right? Now, it's true that tariffs have gone down on UK steel. UK steel, which was tariffed at 25%, is now only going to be tariffed at 10%. But before Liberation Day, or before steel tariffs, it was tariffed at lower than that. So it's still a rise. Automobiles, which were auto parts and automobiles. How many of you drive a British car? Like, you guys drive Rolls Royces, Bentleys, maybe Mini Miners. So maybe Mini, although Mini is owned by BMW, but I think they're made in the UK. I don't know where they're made. Maybe they're made in South Carolina. What else is British? Lotus. Anybody have a Lotus? I haven't seen any Lotuses on American roads. Lotuses are these small, British, cool race cars. What else? Sports cars. There's some other MG. You don't see MGs. Like in Europe, you see them all over the place. You don't see them in the United States. MG is another a British brand of Land Rovers. That's the one. Land Rovers. That's a car we actually import. Aston Martin is a car I would love to import. That's my favorite car is an Aston Martin. Not a lot of Aston Martins on American streets, but a lot of Land Rovers. A lot of Land Rovers, Range Rovers. So Land Rovers, which were going to see an increase in tariff to 25, you only get to see a tariff increase of 10%. You're still paying more. Still paying more. So it's a bad deal. Sorry, it's a terrible deal. Terrible deal. Americans are paying more for British goods. Brits are paying less for American goods. It's a great deal for the UK. Awful deal for the United States. Well, it's not a great deal for the UK. It's a great deal for UK consumers. It's a bad deal for UK producers. It's a good deal for some American producers. But the UK is a tiny little fraction of the market for them. And it's a bad deal for US consumers. Generally, doesn't make a big difference. The reality is the trade with the United Kingdom is tiny in the big picture of things. It's not a big deal. We don't trade a lot with the UK, but it's interesting, right? So. I mean, his attitude to trade is so bewildering, so bizarre, so childish, so wrong, that so even when we get a deal, and he's hailing the deal, this is a great deal, it's good for America, an America First deal, our first trade deal. Now, if all the trade deals are going to be like that, then basically we're stuck with the 10% tariff. 10% tariff was not put in place in order to get a deal. The threat of the reciprocal tariffs of 30, 40, 50, 60% was there to get a deal. But the deal is not, the end result that he's trying to achieve is not zero tariffs, it's 10% on imports. Your cost of goods is rising by that amount. And some increase in exports. He hopes, because tariffs are going to be lower on those exports. Your taxes are not going down, they're going up. You're paying a 10% tax on everything you buy from overseas. That seems to be the conclusion of how these deals are going to happen, to the extent that this framework for deal, by the way, they're still saying the details have not been worked out. This is just a framework. But if this is the framework for this deal and for other deals, then the one myth we can now completely explode, completely trash, is the idea that tariffs were going to be used to negotiate free trade and reciprocity. No. They might be used to negotiate increase in exports, but it's not clear that's a good thing. And it is clear that our costs of buying stuff from overseas is going to go up. All right, just thought I'd update you on that, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to make a lot of noise out of a trade deal. We finally got a trade deal. Isn't this amazing? People are very excitable. Mary Elaine, thank you for the sticker. I really appreciate that. I think I saw another sticker here. Jonathan Honing, of course. Jonathan, thank you for the sticker. Appreciate it. And we're close to getting to our first hour goal. We've got 20 minutes to get there, so there's plenty of time that you can help us get there with a sticker or with a question. We don't have a lot of questions. We have until 6 o'clock Eastern time, so we've got probably an hour for questions. So feel free to ask questions about anything. Anyway. Let's see. Surgeon General. So, I don't know exactly what the job of the Surgeon General is. It's kind of to give advice to Americans about healthcare, I think. They come out and they tell you, what you should eat and what you should get vaccinated or not, and what you should do. They're like the top doctor. They're like the doctor in charge. They're like the main guy that you get generalized health advice from. Well, Donald Trump is on a roll, appointing complete cranks, complete wackos. I know that's not very objective. So let me think of a more objective term to describe people who are anti-science. I think that's an objective term. To positions within the health administration, at the federal level. And he continues that with the nomination of Casey Means for Surgeon General. I mean, this woman is nuts. I mean, really nuts. She is an anti-science weirdo. She's also embracing the woo-woo. I don't know what the woo-woo is. Don't ask me. Oh, I know what she is. She's a witch doctor. She never finished her medical degree. She got the degree, but she never did a residency. So she's never been a practicing doctor. So for a doctor-in-chief, she is not a doctor. Not really. I'm being urged by the chat to call them quacks and wackos. I think those are very good, objective, technical terms to describe RFK and some of the people Trump has nominated, certainly to describe Casey Means. She believes in using spiritual mediums, praying to ancestor shrines, doing full moon ceremonies, so that her dreams can be amplified, so she can gain knowledge from her dreams. Asking the trees in the forest to deliver her whatever it is that she wishes. She big on mushrooms, all kinds, I guess. And she thinks we've got a lot to learn from ancient indigenous cultures. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. This is real. She has no academic achievements to speak of. Again, she did med school and dropped out before her residency, which nobody does. I mean, she was interviewed on Joe Rogan. On Joe Rogan, she claimed that 25% of men under 40 have erectile dysfunction. I don't think that's true. Yep. There have been two sources for this information, by the way, for the 25% of men under 40 with erectile dysfunction. One is an undergraduate student in the southern United States found that 13% of students may meet the criteria for ED, a student. And data from one Italian clinic indicated 25% of men seeking treatment for ED are under 40 years old. God, there's a statistical error there. 25% of the men seeking treatment. Anyway, she can't do statistics. She has no idea how to do statistics. She says 1 in 2 Americans expected to have cancer in their lifetime. Now, 1 in 2. Maybe because we live longer and we diagnose a lot more? No, but that wouldn't be right. 1 in, she says, heart disease is, which is totally preventable, right? Primarily by the use of statins. That's what prevents heart disease. I don't think she's an advocate for statins. Anyway, totally preventable is the leading cause of death in the United States, killing around 800,000 people a year. Now that sounds really bad. Really bad. Until you realize that deaths from cardiovascular disease have actually dropped dramatically. Dramatically, I mean by more than 50%, by more than half, since the 1950s. You remember those 1950s? The 1950s, where we all had a wife that stayed home and cooked delicious, natural, organic food for us. And none of us died from cardiac disease, and we had 4 kids, a dog, a station wagon, a house we could afford, amazing road trips and just lived in nirvana heaven. You remember those 50s? And our standard of living was much higher than it is today. Anyway, during those 50s, the prevalence of cardiovascular disease in the United States was, I'm just looking at the graph, I'm trying to extrapolate the graph, about 3 times what it is today. So if she's right and 800,000 people are dying today from heart disease, back then, as a percentage of the population, it was 3 times the number. By the way, the same thing is true in France, Italy, and the UK. The rates of heart disease are plummeted. Now, a big reason for that is statins, is pharmaceuticals, medicine, which I think she shuns in favor of talking to the trees in the woods at sunset, something like that. She has a book called Good Energy. All kinds of nonsense. All kinds of nonsense where she puts down, she puts down a lot of that, like the conventional healthcare, a lot of the studies. Anyway, she's now Surgeon General. I mean, you could go online and find a list of all her quacky, weirdo, ridiculous, stupid things that she believes in. So now, officially now, I mean, I think this is maybe this is the way things should be. Right now, basically, our healthcare establishment in government is filled with quacks, wackos, and charlatans. And maybe this is good, because maybe this finally will result in the American people saying, we'll talk to our doctor. We're not going to listen to guys in D.C. Maybe a little bit of skepticism of what is going on in D.C. would be a good thing. Good thing. Yeah. And maybe ultimately we'll benefit from the fact that they're not funding science or medical science research, and that'll start reverting to the private sector. I heard today that that Bill Gates has decided to wind down his foundation. That his foundation, $200 billion, will spend all that money over the next 20 years. In 20 years, December 31st, 2045, the foundation will have $0. And I think that part of his motivation is to accelerate spending on medical research, because the government is stepping out of that area. And if that is the case, then maybe some good will come from this haphazard, cut of medical research by the government. And, all these wackos in charge of healthcare maybe will result in people, maybe approaching their doctor and using their doctor and, not paying attention to the governmental authorities, but actually paying attention to the scientific authorities. Right? Which I think is a good thing. We should stop getting healthcare advice from our government. Start getting healthcare advice from our doctors. And then it's up to you to find a good doctor who's going to give good advice. All right. I don't know. I mean, it just goes from bad to worse in terms of these appointments and in terms of the people. He did appoint a good guy, a guy that's mixed but can be good for the vaccine. The part of the government is responsible for vaccines. So, I mean, it's some good people, decent people, but then they're these complete crazies at the same time. Talk about crazies. She's not crazy. She's just bad. AOC, AOC is now considered a favorite, or one of the favorites, for the Democratic nomination in 2028. I think according to Nate Silver, he ranks at number one right now among Democrats. Now, I think it's very, very early, obviously. And we have no idea how she'll actually do, but the fact is that she is running. It appears she's running. She's out on a campaign, not a campaign trail, doing events with Bernie Sanders. She is trying to increase her visibility. She's already got a lot of visibility. She's articulate. As I've told you in the past, I think she's smart. She knows how to handle herself in front of a camera. And she's going for it, right? If she won, she would be, I think, the youngest person ever to be president. Buttigieg, or whatever his name is also going to run probably. But then you've got the governor of California, and you've got probably the governor of Pennsylvania, and maybe some other governors, governor of one of the southern states. Is it Louisiana has a Republican governor, and then there's the governor of North Carolina. All of those governors might run. You got to get a pretty wild. It'll be a wild, but it'll be a wide field of people. But it does look like AOC is, if you will, the front runner, at least according to this. And I think that's a death knell for the Democrats. I think Democrats have a real shot at winning in 2028 if and only if they can put somebody, forward who is not associated with the wacky left, cannot be linked to DEI and all the rest of them, and the rest of the woke agenda, is not part of the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. Although AOC is being demonstrated as she's going around giving talks, she's being demonstrated by the pro-Hamas. She's not quite far left enough. And maybe she's trying to distance herself from the very far left because she is running for president. Hard to tell. Anyway, if she is going to run, I don't think she can win. I don't think a far left candidate can win in the United States. There's also, on the Republican side, the governor of Georgia, Kemp, who I like for two things, really. One is he was the first governor to open up his state from lockdowns. The first governor to open it up before, what's his name, in Florida. And Trump got angry with him. Like, I remember this. Trump got mad at him because he was opening up sooner than Trump wanted, that Trump had authorized or had agreed to. And Kemp was independent. This is enough. Opened it up and didn't lock down again. That's one thing I liked about him. And the second is that he stands up to Trump. Stood up to Trump, refused to acknowledge that the election was stolen in Georgia, and in spite of standing up for Trump, won by a big margin a second term in Georgia, and by most accounts has done a pretty good job in Georgia. So I'd say, so he was approached by Republicans to run for the Senate in 2026, and he would probably win. I mean, right now, there are two Democrats, right, who represent Georgia in the Senate. And he could beat one of the Democrats and flip a seat for the Republicans. And he is refusing. And one of the speculations is that he is not running for the Senate because he wants to run for president in 2028. That would be a good move. I not knowing a lot about him, but the little I know about him, I would say I would support him over the usual candidates or the people I fear are going to run. So he would improve the Republican field significantly. Right? By the way, who do the Republicans think is going to run for the Senate in Georgia against a Democrat? The AOC of the right. Who's the AOC of the right? Actually scarier than AOC, wackier than AOC, crazier than AOC. And the one thing is true, significantly stupider, dumber than AOC. I mean, maybe the dumbest congressman. If not, then, one of the dumbest. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to run for the Senate, and she will probably lose. And Georgia will stay with 2 Democratic senators, which is hard to imagine. Georgia, which is a red state, should be a red state, having 2 Democratic senators. But there you go. If you have candidates like this, that's what you get. All right. I want to end with just a little spiel on this one issue. Let me see. What was this? I don't need that. Let me see this. Yeah. So this is a topic that I keep coming back to. It's a topic that is all over the press. It's all over Twitter. It's all over, the media. It's a topic that both the left and the right agree on. And it's a topic where they're just lying to us. I mean, literally lying to us. But it's a topic that they started out on the left. This is the idea that America has been hollowed out. And you see this all over the place. And I mean, Barry Weiss had this on Free Press. There was this article basically saying, everybody agrees that America has been hollowed out. No, not everybody agrees. I don't. A lot of other people. Pretty much most economists don't agree with that. What does they mean by hollowed out? It means the middle class in America over the last 50 years has been in decline. It means that we've lost millions and millions of high-paying manufacturing jobs and replaced them with low-paying service jobs. And as a consequence, standard of living, quality of life, and wages, real wages, adjusted for inflation, have gone down. And this is a lie that I started hearing in around the financial crisis. The 70s were peak America, best time. Wages were up, standard of living were up, quality of life was up. And since then, we've stagnated to down. Everything's worse in America today. And the cause of this, of course, is, I mean, it could be framed as too much capitalism by the left. But the left and the right agree that a big cause of this is too much globalization. Too much globalization. So I just want to do a quick segment about saying, just not true. So a few things. One, trade is not that big when you look at the United States. The United States has a massive economy that provides most of its own stuff. I mean, if you look at U.S. trade deficit with China, for example, it's 1% of GDP. If you look at, total U.S. imports of manufactured good minus exports, it's 4% of GDP. That is, it's not going to have a huge, humongous impact on quality of life, standard of living. Now, it could have a big impact if you stop it, because a lot of stuff manufactured in the United States requires pieces that come in, and it could have a short-term impact on jobs, but all of that will adjust ultimately. But it's just, there's no way with all of that, particularly this idea that China caused it all, there's no way that 1% of GDP supposedly has caused the decline in wages, the decline of the middle class, all of this stuff. It's just not true. Not true. I mean, the share of manufacturing in the United States of total GDP, like how much of GDP in the United States is made up from manufacturing, has declined. In 1960, it was about 22, 23% of all GDP was manufacturing. Today, it's about 12%. Decline. But it's declined everywhere. It's declined in France at about the same pace it declined in the United States. It's declined in the United Kingdom at about the same pace it's declined in the United States. It's declined in Japan, although at a slower rate and from a higher percentage. It's declined in Germany from its peak, but again, a lot less. Germany has structured its economy around manufacturing, so there's a much smaller decline as a percent of total GDP. Of course, GDP in the United States has grown much faster than France, United Kingdom, Germany, or Japan over the last 50 years, particularly over the last 20 years. And shockingly, it's declined, the percentage of GDP that comes from manufacturing has actually declined in China. It peaked in China in like 2005, and it's come down, and it's still going down, and it will go down. The reality is that there's only so much stuff we're going to buy, we're going to need. As we get richer and richer and richer, okay, you buy a fancier car, and you buy, I don't know, today everybody has a washing machine. Everybody has a dryer. We don't replace those every year. Everybody has a dishwasher. Everybody has a refrigerator. Not true, by the way, in the 1950s. Everybody has air conditioning. Most people have air conditioning. Not true in the 1950s. But today, we bought all the stuff we need. Where is the growth coming from, the demand that we take? Well, it's software. It's the stuff running on our phone. It's services like Netflix, entertainment generally. We spend way more money today on entertainment than we did 50 years ago. We have more time. We have more options. There's a lot more to do. We get our nails done. Anybody remember pedicures and manicures 30 years ago? Never mind 50 years ago. Anybody get pedicures and manicures 30, 50 years ago? Maybe they're very rich. Now every strip mall has a pedicure place and a manicure place and whatever they do inside there, right? Those are services. Restaurants. I mean, there have been restaurants for the last 50 years. But there are a lot more restaurants today than there were back then. A lot more. Americans spend a lot more of their money going out to eat than they used to. And fancy restaurants, nice restaurants. When did celebrity chef become a thing? Like celebrities were never chefs. They were actors and actresses. Chefs. But what we get in a restaurant is basically service. It's a service industry. The food is a product, but the restaurant is a service industry. So the growth is in services. The growth is in pampering ourselves. The growth is in living a better life, and most of the better life is not a function of stuff. It's a function of experiences. We go on vacations. Spend a lot of money on vacations. Tourism, way up as a percent of GDP. Well, until this year, right? So, it's crazy. Yeah, manufacturing is down. It's manufacturing everywhere in the world. That has to be. There's not enough stuff to manufacture. People don't consume that much stuff. And then they tell us the middle class has been hollowed out. But we're like unbelievably rich in America. Richer than any other developed country in the world. I mean, I don't count Norway, but even Norway, rich in this sense, not GDP per capita. Put aside GDP per capita. It's not a great term. Take median. Median is at the 50%. That is the point at which 50% of the population is below and 50% is the population is above. Now take median disposable household income. Now include in that taxes. So this is disposable income. This is after you pay taxes. But also include in that welfare benefits. So the benefits you might receive. Even include in that, for you Europeans, healthcare benefits that you receive, all that free healthcare is added to median disposable household income. And what do you get when you do that? When you do median disposable household income, including what's called in-kind transfers, taxes, welfare, healthcare, Americans are dramatically richer than Norwegians. The only people close to us is that little country called Luxembourg. Switzerland does okay, but, you know, disposable income in the United States is over 60,000. Switzerland is just over 50,000. They're still a significant behind us. And then if you look at, I don't know, everybody's talking about Poland's an up and coming, but Poland is only about, you know, it's a little bit more than half of the United States. U.S. is rich. And median is at the 50% mark. That's about middle class. The middle class in America is richer than the middle class anywhere in the world. And as I've told you before, the middle class in America is shrinking because more of it are becoming rich. And the poor, defined by some government metric, the poor shrunk, the middle class shrunk. The only income group that's grown are the rich. How's that hollowing out the middle class? If you look at incomes are up. There was a period in American history where it appears that there was wage stagnation. Between about 1974 and 1993. So the 70s and 80s, there was income stagnation. But since the 90s, income is up. Income is up in every category of income. If you look at income in the United States from the 1950s, it's up till 73 about, flat to about 93, and then up. And up significantly. And again, you can, if you do the median hourly wage, you can do all kinds of different types of ways to actually measure income. They're all up. You have to really make an effort to fudge the statistics to come out with an idea that people make less money today than they did back then. Now, up in real terms, adjusted for inflation. No cheating here. By the way, wage growth. Over the last 25 years has been happening in every segment of the wage distribution. So the bottom 10% and the top 10% have done the best. But so is everybody in the middle. Everybody has seen their income grow significantly. If you look at real hourly wages at every decile, they're all up. By more than 40% since 1996, working class and the poor. Wages, hourly wages, real hourly wages are up by more than 40% since 1996. if you take some places around the country, like, I don't know, Flint, Michigan, right? Flint, Michigan. If you look at the 10th percentile, the bottom, the 10th percentile, right, has seen their income grow by 40%. Now, it is true that median real wages in Flint, Michigan have gone down by 16%. They lost auto jobs, they lost manufacturing jobs. But here's the interesting comparison. Take Greensboro, High Point, North Carolina. Anybody know what we used to manufacture 20 years ago, 30 years ago in Greensboro, High Point, North Carolina? Textiles. Textiles. The industry was decimated. But North Carolina has a, relatively speaking, pretty, as states goes, pretty free markets. As a consequence, the economy restructured. People changed jobs. And what we have is, again, every income group, wages are up in Greensboro. Not in Flint, but in Greensboro. Maybe that has more to do with the politics of Michigan and the politics of North Carolina than anything else. Indeed, I've been seeing all around, right, these graphs of income, average, median and average income in North Carolina. Up since the textile mills closed, income is up. People shifted. Now, it is interesting. The population of Flint has basically stayed steady. The population of Greensboro, North Carolina, has continued to increase. So, by every measure you look at, where did all those manufacturing jobs go? Well, the number of people working in STEM has exploded. Number of people working in education and healthcare gone up dramatically. The number of people working in business and management way up. These are all better paying jobs, easier on the bones, easier on the body than manufacturing. That's why wages have gone up. It's not that if you stuck to the same job, you're now being paid a lot more. It's that people switch jobs. And they switch jobs to better paying jobs. And to less muscle-bound jobs. So higher quality of life jobs. It really is, it really is stunning, and how they continue just to on and on and on and on droll about, this is the paragraph from this article that was on Free Press. No one anymore, on the left or right, denies that globalization has fractured the U.S., both economically and socially. It has hollowed out once prosperous regions like the furniture-making areas of North Carolina and auto manufacturing town of the Midwest. It has been a driver of income inequality. Perhaps most alarmingly, the U.S. has outsourced not just manufacturing of toys and furniture, but pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, products we need for our national security, and they go on and on and on. And a bunch of people have said, no one anymore? Well, I do. I deny it. It's just wrong. So if you see these posts, please deny it. It just ain't true. It just ain't true. Even labor participation rate among prime age, 25 to 54-year-olds, is close to its peak right now. Close to the highest it's ever been. Now, overall, labor participation rates are down. Why? Because the baby boomers are retiring. And they're not working. All right. I just wanted to say that one more time. And let me just make one more point. One of the things people complain about is that a lot of the things that they consume are much, much more expensive. And that is true for some things. some things are much, much cheaper. As compared to 2000, televisions are 98% cheaper. Computer software is 74% cheaper. Toys are 74% cheaper. By the way, that's because we've outsourced manufacturing to China and other places. We can now buy as many dolls for our kids as we want. 74.4% cheaper than they were in 2000. That's pretty amazing. That's the power of globalization. TVs, we don't make them in the US anymore. We weren't making them in 2000 either. But they're 98% cheaper. We're buying them from South Korea. Cell phone service over the last 25 years has gone down by 42% because of improved technology. Clothing is down by 1%. Now, some things are up. Cars are more expensive, 25.4%. You think that has anything to do with the ever-increasing regulations on automobiles? The constant threat that the companies live under? And the fact that we won't import Chinese cars? I bet you if we imported Chinese cars, new cars would be cheaper. Or at least the same price as they were in 2000. And we'd have a lot more competition. Household furnishing has gone up a little bit, like 16.8% over 20-something years, right? Now, based on this graph, and every graph is going to be a little different, average hourly wages have gone up 123%. So we can buy a lot more TVs. Food and beverage has gone up about 100%, less than wages. Housing has gone up 104%. That's less than wages. But here's the kicker. Things that have gone up more than wages: medical care, child care, college textbooks, college tuition, hospital services. So the things that the government is heavily involved in providing, healthcare and education, those have become much, 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 much more expensive relative to wages. Everything else is much cheaper. Much cheaper. Again, housing has gone up less than hourly wages. Now, this is probably not true in California, where it's gone up more. But hourly wages have probably gone up more in California as well. So I don't know what this graph would look like in California. This is average across the country. Right? In a lot of places in America, housing has not become more expensive. Stop bitching and complaining. And I've told you, Gen Zs are richer, given their age, than any generation before them. And they're the biggest complainers. They think they're the poorest. Like a 23-year-old is going, I can't buy a house. I can't afford a house. When can a 23-year-old ever afford a house? Ever. All right. If you live in a place where housing is doubled and you really want a home, then you can go to Alabama, you can go to Mississippi, you can go to Ohio, go to a lot of places around the country where housing has not gone up that much. And indeed, in Austin, Texas, housing has gotten cheaper since COVID. They went way up during COVID, and it's gone down since then. It's all a question of whether supply was allowed to pick up or not. In areas where supply is allowed to pick up, housing doesn't get much more expensive. In areas where supply is not allowed to pick up, housing, where supply can't pick up, it gets more expensive. Supply can't pick up, then it doesn't get more expensive. Simple supply and demand. Simple supply and demand. Not Another Guitar Channel says, we bought our first home at 23 on part-time jobs. How old are you now? And he says, but that was kind of weird that we could do that. But how old are you now? And where do you live? I want to know how old you are and where you live. So you are Gen what? All right, hopefully we'll find out in a minute. All right, guys, that was the news. Thursday, May 8th. Everybody, I know you're all feeling poor, but you're not. You're all jealous of those Europeans having that crazy lifestyle. Yeah, lifestyle of poor people. You know, be jealous of that. Okay, so that was 14 years ago, right? 14 years ago. And now you live in Australia, but when did you buy where did you live when you bought the home? And you got a government-assisted loan. Okay. Yeah, and if you have rich parents and they bought a home for you, then you can do it too. But generally, 23-year-olds cannot afford a home and never have been able to. I didn't own my first home until I was 30. So it was 1995. So I was 34 years old. I bought my first home when I was 30. Oh, well, actually, I kind of bought a home in Israel before that, but that was, assistance from parents and stuff like that, right? So first house in America. And look, I am a huge beneficiary of house prices going up because the first home I bought in California doubled in price from the time I bought it to the time I sold it in, 5 years. Second home I bought in California almost doubled in price in 4 years. The third home I bought in California barely went up in price. So the third home I bought relatively at a peak. And then when I sold it during COVID, I made a little bit on it, but barely anything. So in a laissez-faire capitalist world, housing prices would decline. Supply would meet demand, and housing is a consumption good. It would go down in price. And paying it off fully, I don't expect ever to pay my home fully. I don't want to pay my house on fully. I mean, mortgages are great. You should learn to love your mortgage. You get to tax deduct the interest on the payment. Hopefully you have a low interest rate payment, low interest rate on the mortgage. What is not to love about a mortgage? All right. As you know, if you've taken my personal finance classes, Yaron likes debt. All right. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Let's jump into the super chats. We're like $80 short of our second hour goal. We'll probably go until 6. Probably not much more beyond that. So $20 questions would be good. But yeah. Andrew, I may sponsor a show on this topic, or perhaps the $100 answer satisfies my curiosity. How would you prove inductively that selfishness is good? I know many in Objectivism have addressed this, but you are a very talented inducer. So I'm very interested in your approach. How would you induce that selfishness is good? Well, what does selfishness mean? It means doing good. So the challenge here is that the very nature, the very definition of good is that which promotes human life. Whose human life? My life. I define good in terms of selfishness. So I can't escape selfishness being good. It's a circular argument because it has to be. Now, you could ask why selfishness is right. But once you embrace the morality of selfishness, selfishness is good. That's the definition of good. What is good independent of selfishness? Like, if I asked you, what is good? That which promotes my life. That's selfish. So, and this goes back to the question you asked me, and then I think you asked Anka. Right? Why is selfishness right? Why is your life as the standard right? And that is because as a biological living being, you need to be alive. You need to live life. And you must pursue values in order to survive, to exist. So if you give up on existence, then life is no longer good and selfishness is irrelevant. But if you decide, if you choose to live, then you must live. Which means you have to pursue your own life. Which means you have to pursue your own values. Which means you have to pursue your own interests. And that is what is good, because that's what is. That's what life is. And the bad, therefore, evil, is that which threatens your life. So you have to be an egoist, right? You have to be an egoist. You have to be selfish if you want to live. Life, biology, requires it. A plant pursues its own values. The value of water, sunlight. An animal, every animal pursues its own values, the values necessary for its own existence. We as human beings should pursue the values necessary for our own existence. Everything is conditional on our existence. Nothing exists if we don't exist. So we must pursue the values necessary for our existence. That is, by definition, selfishness, and that is the good. That's what it means. That's what morality is. Good is after you've defined morality. Morality is defining good versus evil, the right path, wrong path, virtues and values that lead you to life, those that do not. The virtues and values and those that lead to life, that is the good. So it's right there. All right? All right. Let's see. So I don't think looking at this inductively, makes any sense. Somebody says, look at the quality of life of people who are selfish. But you're already assuming the outcome, right? You look at the quality of life based on what? Is a higher quality of life better? Well, but then if a higher quality of life is the good, then that means a high quality of life for me is the good, then I should pursue a high quality of life. That's being selfish. And whatever leads to a high quality of life. Now, the details, you can ask, why does reason lead to high quality of life? Why does honesty lead to high quality of life? Why does this particular set of ethical principles lead to a higher quality of life? That's a different question, but leading to a high quality of life is being selfish. That's the standard, and that's good. So I'm not sure I've answered what you want me to answer, but hopefully I've clarified the issue for you. Remo, and thank you for the $100, Andrew. Really appreciate it. Remo, $50 or 60 euro. What has been the most important innovation in the history of money? Well, certainly the most important innovation is the discovery of money, the idea of using money, of applying things as money has to be the first, right? But once we have money, it was probably coming up with a common medium of exchange like gold, adopting gold as a common medium of exchange, and then, creating coins out of gold. Although they were created out of other metals before that. You could say maybe it was banking, the whole idea of banking, and certainly the development of modern banking was crucial for everything, crucial for everything that happens afterwards, crucial for all the financial markets and institutions and that are made possible through banking, and therefore crucial for the Industrial Revolution and for the capitalism's or the success of Western civilization. I think that's what it would be. Mary said, also $50, thank you. I'm a minister, and I can ordain you. Yes, that would be great. Father Yaron. I like that. Ordained Yaron. Are you really a minister, Mary? What does that even mean? What does ordaining me constitute? All right, Ali. Yaron, you know how nature has checks and balances to control animal populations. Do you think war plays a similar role for humans, acting as a population control since we're managed to overcome most other natural limits? Okay, so the two issues here, really. When population was a problem, that is, when there was, in a sense, a risk that we couldn't produce enough, there was just too many people, then what really fixes this is not so much war, but disease and starvation. And that is the checks and balance, right? People, you can't grow enough food, people starve, they die, you get a smaller population. But even more than that, what you get is, even more than that is that you get plagues and diseases. Once we develop into a industrialized, sophisticated civilization, and we, in a sense, eradicate diseases, then there's no limit to how many people can live. That is, as soon as you liberate the human mind, as soon as you embrace capitalism, even just some capitalism, then there is no limit to the human population. We could be 20 billion people on the planet. We could be 40 billion people on the planet. I have no doubt that we could feed them all, and there's plenty of room, and we haven't even touched the oceans. So there is no constraint. There's no reason to have population control. Now, again, it could be that wars, were part of the disease, nature fighting back at us when we weren't productive, when we weren't growing, when we weren't free. But I think it played a minor role as compared to diseases. And today, it should play zero role because there's literally no limit to how big the population will be. I'd say today, the control on the population is our choice. The fact that most people don't want to have lots of kids. There's so much stuff to do in the world. There's so much fun to be had in the world that, yeah, having kids is fun and good and worthwhile, but not too many, because then I won't have any time to have all the other fun I could have, which requires not having kids. I won't have the resources, the money to travel, to do all kinds of other things where kids are a barrier. So we have fewer kids, and then, we have them later, so we have more fun before, and then when they leave home, we live longer so we can have more fun later. But the whole idea of overpopulation is bogus. There's no such problem. Michael, the left eventually realized that MAGA can be a great ally for them. MAGA has the same materialistic, nihilistic tendencies as the left, just like how the lefties in Germany switched over to allying with Hitler. That is the great risk, particularly if MAGA embraces environmentalist concerns. Then I think you could really see an alliance of left and right. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take some charismatic leaders to bring the left and right together. But yes, there's so many similarities that it is definitely the ultimate risk, or the ultimate risk for authoritarianism in America is when we get a leader who can unite elements of the left and elements of the right. Hopper Campbell, Pakistan's attacking India, Hamas attacking Israel, Russia invading Ukraine, this is all a result of renewed nationalist fervor and weakness of the West. we're at pre-World War III levels of homicidal collectivism. Absolutely. There's no question. This is a direct consequence of the rise of nationalism and collectivism. And it's a direct consequence of the weakness of America, the weakness of the West, the unwillingness of the West to stand for what it believes in, declare its enemies, and be willing to fight them the way they should be fought. I mean, Russia would never invade Ukraine if they thought America would stand by Ukraine fully and unequivocally, or if Europe had a European military that would stand by Ukraine. Hamas would have never been in a position to attack Israel if Israel has dealt with it the dozens of times, opportunities it's had to deal with Hamas. And at the end of the day, Pakistan and India, it's the same thing. Islamists would not be a force in the world if after 9/11, the United States had done what is necessary in order to eliminate them as a force in the world. Or maybe even they could have done it earlier. Could have done it in 79 with Khomeini, or any time since. Dan, I have a Ph.D. in philosophy, Dan Norton. I have a Ph.D. in philosophy. I studied at the Ayn Rand Institute. I also have a show on YouTube that promotes Ayn Rand. My channel is at Dan Norton 1. Last name is spelled Norton. I live stream and I take live calls. So Dan paying $20 to advertise on the Yaron Brook Show. All right, Todd. Reformed druid. She prays to shrubs. I don't know what a druid is, but yeah, she prays to shrubs. Now she is your Surgeon General, the top doctor in the country. It's bizarre. Jennifer says, my parents moved from rural Pennsylvania to Detroit in the 1950s for auto jobs. They sent their kids to nursing and law school, service jobs. My brother and I got degrees in 1980s, upward mobility, and you got degrees in engineering, service jobs. Engineering is a service job. It could be for the purpose of manufacturing, but you're not actually literally building stuff. All right. Okay, we've got a $50 from Ali. Thank you, Ali. I'm writing a book on transcendence. Since we've hit limits in the physical world, but not in tech, I believe the path forward is uploading consciousness into simulations to live the lives we truly want and deserve, unlimited resources. I mean, that's interesting if you think you can upload consciousness. I am skeptical about whether we can upload consciousness, and if we can, I think we're a century at least away from it. I think our understanding of what consciousness is, our understanding of what life is as a phenomena, is still so primitive, so early stages, that I find it difficult to believe that we can upload a consciousness. I mean, most philosophers today don't even believe we have a consciousness to upload. But, I mean, it would be amazing if you could upload your consciousness, all your memories, all your thoughts, everything, who you are, and put it up there so it is permanent. It never gets wiped, never goes away. It gives you immortality. But I'm just skeptical that it's, not that it's theoretically impossible. I don't know. I have no view on the theory. But I'm very skeptical of its practicality anytime in the next few decades. Thank you, Ali. Thanks for the support. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope immortality is something we can achieve. I'm living a long time is a good thing. Andrew, the collectivists feel that the middle class is hollowed out, irrespective of facts. Based on feelings, they form into warring political factions about how to cure with government force a problem which at its core is false. Yes, and the intellectuals know that people feel this way and are trying to convince people to feel this way, even people don't feel this way, because it's a way for the intellectuals to get power. Because at the end of the day, what does it mean to use government force? What does it mean to have warring political factions? It means hire the intellectuals to control other people. They want to have that control. They want to be pulling those levers to equate inequality, to fill in the hollowing out or whatever it is, right? So the intellectuals are constantly lying to us in an attempt to convince us that we're worse off than we even think we are. Because they benefit in some way from it, right? The desire to power. None Another Guitar Channel. You spoke about Belt&Road initiative last episode. To what extent do you think the Chinese built infrastructure is going to fall apart in a few years? I've heard a lot of horror stories where they took shortcuts. I mean, it's possible, but I've also seen some amazing infrastructure that the Chinese have built. I mean, there are roads all over the world that are holding up, at least so far, a lot of them in pretty rough territory. They built a lot of ports. I know they built one port in Haifa, where I grew up in Israel, and it's a beautiful facility. It looks gorgeous now. I haven't heard anything about it deteriorating and falling apart. Now, look, I'm sure some of the Chinese contractors are happy to cut corners, and they're very corrupt and to cheat and steal and build shitty projects. So some of it, I don't know how much, will indeed fall apart. But it's hard for me to say how much. It really is hard for me to say. I just don't know. I don't have the facts. We would need to really do some research into that. I'm sure there are anecdotal stories, but there are also anecdotal stories of the opposite. Christian, hi, Yaron. I saw the comments on your video with Destiny. It's great to see how many people were introduced to Objectivism and how you engage so many minds to think. Very inspiring. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Christian. And yeah, we definitely got about over 100 subscribers to the channel. I think maybe 150 subscribers to the channel because of it. So in that sense, it's been fantastic. And a lot of new people probably listening right now. There's some people who came to the channel from Destiny. Hopefully they like it. Hopefully they don't leave. They stay with us. But yeah, I mean, you know, subscriptions were fairly flat, rising very, very slowly, and then they just went up dramatically. So we've done a month's worth of subscriptions in 4 days because of the appearance on Destiny. So there's no question it went well. It's not the thousands of people like I got when I did in the early days, because in the early days I was so unknown. It was low-hanging fruit. It was everybody came about. Now hopefully we get more. Part of the thing to consider, Ali says, time to make our heaven in simulation. No sadness, no loss, just pure happiness, and simulation just built for your need. You can be anything, warrior, and so on. But the question is, if there's no pain, if there's no opportunity, if there's no possibility of death, if there's no downside, then are the values real? Can you be happy if it's all just provided for you? Is heaven, in that sense, good for you? I mean, it's worth reading what Ayn Rand says about the immortal robot, and how if you're truly immortal, if you truly cannot die, and the pain mechanism is not useful because you cannot die, so you don't feel pain. Do you feel pleasure? Do you feel happiness? Does happiness mean anything? If happiness comes from achieving values, and values are the things that we desire and are necessary for our survival and thriving, If survival is off the table, are values? Is happiness possible? So, things to think about as you're writing your book. Justin, splitting into 2 super chats due to character limits. Just wanted to air my frustration regarding the so-called right-wing Australian opposition party that recently got pummeled in the national elections. It's not right-wing, not even close. Well, I don't know what right-wing means these days. It's statist and leftist, and it only differentiates itself from the ruling left-wing party by giving out slightly different goodies and picking slightly different winners and losers. Sadly, that has been true of the right wing in the West for a very, very long time. You know, right wing is not meant those who advocate for individual rights and laissez-faire capitalism. It's meant those who are slightly, moderately, a little less redistributive, and maybe once in a while do a deregulation, but generally just a statist of the left with a different focus. That's true in America. That's true in most of the Western world, unfortunately. And there is nobody out there, nobody, Australia or anywhere else, defending capitalism, defending freedom, defending liberty, defending individual rights. It just doesn't exist. Tragic as it may be, there's nobody to vote for in that sense. Anne says, is one reason you haven't debated a Trump supporter because you'd have to consider their arguments and that would be a sanction of them? No, not at all. I consider their arguments all the time and be happy to consider an argument and be happy to debate a Trump supporter. Find one who will debate me. I'm not talking about a third-rate, fourth-rate nobody. If there's a prominent Trump supporter who's not a complete nutcase, you know, who has a significant following, I'd be happy to debate them. So it's just that I don't know of any one of them that would debate me. You know, if Peter Navarro wants to debate, happy to. If, I don't know, find one, a university professor who supports Trump or anybody else, I have no problem debating a Trump supporter about their support of Trump. Again, if there's, I'm not going to, you know, Ben Shapiro, I'd happy to debate Ben Shapiro. Happy to debate Ben Shapiro. Even on this. I think Douglas Murray supports Trump. I'd debate Douglas Murray on it. So, yeah, let them know. Douglas Murray, I think, is charging a fortune now for his lecturing. But, yeah, if you can find somebody credible, I'll debate them. I just won't debate just any Joe Schmo on the internet. It has to be of value to me, which means it has to provide me with exposure to people I don't usually get exposure to in significant numbers. Esoteric dichotomy. Excited and concerned about AI. Many guest speakers at my university are saying it's eliminating many accounting jobs, but also creating new possibilities. Absolutely. And indeed, if you're in school right now, if you're in accounting, if you're in almost any profession, radiology, any profession, you've got to consider one of the real things you need to really think about and spend some time. How is AI going to affect my job? What elements of my job is it going to take away? And where does it create opportunities? And invest in those areas where it creates opportunities. But it's going to affect almost every job. Everybody should be engaging with AI, studying it, you know, figuring out how is this going to change my world? How can I use it to change my world? Michael, why is the right so much better at implementing socialism than the left? It's always the case, right? I mean, the left is better at implementing capitalism than the right. New Zealand was liberalized by a socialist government. It's the one that turned New Zealand into a relatively free market in the 1980s. It's why the right is more likely to sign peace agreements. It's why, because if the right does it, then everybody buys into it. It has no opposition when it does socialism. When the left does socialism, the right opposes them because they're in opposition. But when the right does it, nobody opposes them. The left embraces them. So the best way for the right to enlarge its coalition is to embrace the ideas of its opposition. Oops. Andrew. And by the way, the same thing happened when the left embraced more free markets. That's why Jimmy Carter could deregulate. There's no opposition. Once the left accepts certain principles, the right says it embraces those principles. It can't oppose them. Andrew says, thanks for the very interesting answer on selfishness. Would you say that if one chooses to live, one inherently chooses selfishness as his ethics, but then why are so many who do choose to still live altruistically? Because they've been convinced that that is the only appropriate way to live. I think if philosophers didn't make the effort to convince them that their choice was to live to sacrifice, they wouldn't. And if you take away the afterlife, a lot of altruism would go out the window. People would say, why should I sacrifice? Wait a minute, I'm alive. I don't think they necessarily embrace Ayn Rand's morality, but they would definitely say, I don't want to sacrifice to those punks. But if I tell you, if you sacrifice those punks, you go to heaven and gain eternal life. Oh, okay, I'll do it. And that's how the witch doctor manipulates you. So human beings also are not connected in nature in the same way, right? Because we can think. So, primitive people can be, they don't understand what survival means. They don't know what exactly it requires. Maybe listening to my tribal leader is the best way for me to survive. Again, surviving qua human requires effort, it requires real thinking. And that's what people have not done. Michael says, will this great move from middle class to wealth that's been happening throughout America over the last 40 years stop or be seriously diminished because of Trump is doing? I mean, look, it's happening very slowly. It could have been happening much faster. I don't know if Trump diminishes it or just slows it down some more. And I don't know if any other president would do any better. Under laissez-faire capitalism, if we move towards laissez-faire capitalism today, that movement would be much faster. Indeed, the number of poor would be shrinking dramatically. And, everybody would be rich in a few decades. That's what we're missing out of. That's the parallel universe we're not experiencing. That's the loss. Michael, Trump isn't the only problem. He is the shiny object. This was a movement waiting for a leader. Yes, I agree. And it's got adherents on the left and on the right. It's just an anti-man, anti-freedom, anti-capitalist movement that manifests itself in a variety of different ways. Ron Gavrieli, Trump is disgusting me to the bone. I never believed I would miss Biden. Yeah, I know the feeling. But I'm not surprised. Superchats, to her credit, AOC is one of the few Dems not afraid to call Trump and MAGA for what they are. Other Dems are too scared and cowardly. Yeah, and I mean, she's not a coward. She's bright, she's articulate, she's smart, not a coward. She's just really, really evil. Her ideas are really, really evil. She's a bad person. It'd be great if we had a better opposition. Eyal, thank you for the sticker. Kev, thoughts on Quebec, Canada? It's pretty. Montreal is pretty. Quebec is pretty. They speak French. It's not a great thing. They used to be obnoxious because they were French. They've changed. They've gotten a lot better. So it's a nice place. I mean, it's heavily regulated. Too much socialism. But food is good, French influence. It's really pretty. The old towns in Quebec and in Montreal are really pretty. And it's got a lot going for it. I know people who live there and love it. They're very left-wing places, but so's a lot of the world. What can you do? But in terms of actual place, it's really nice. I haven't been. in a long time. I can't remember when the last time I was in Montreal or Quebec. It's been a while. So I don't have an updated view on them in terms of firsthand experience. It's been quite a while. Todd, thank you for the sticker. Chocolus, Alan, Vadim, Mary-Aline, thank you all for the stickers. I think I caught everybody, yes. All right, thank you, Kev. I like numbers. If you had to choose between AOC and Vance in 2028, God help us. That's my choice. God help us. Again, I'd stay home. Michael, the Destiny video is up to 65,000 and getting good comments. Yeah. Yep. I mean, going on these shows is of value. And the nice thing about Destiny is he invited me back. So I will be back. I'm going to be gone for the next 3 weeks starting on Monday. But sometime in June, I will contact Destiny and propose a discussion about a topic. Blaze, guitar lessons. What would you say about not allowing Muslims to immigrate to the United States? Do they not assimilate over time? Many of them do. Many of them do. So I think probably most of them do. Look, my view is that if the United States does what it should do, that is declare war on Islamists, stop Muslim immigration, win the war, then you can allow immigrants back in. I think one thing you could do with Muslims is screen them for ideology. You could declare Islamism as a live threat, and if you uphold an Islamist view, and you'd have to define what that means, then you cannot immigrate to the United States. And you could look at their background, look at where they went to school, look at how their wives dress or whatever, and you could ban them. I'm willing to conceive of a Muslim ban, but I'd much rather just win the war, and I'd much rather, if you're going to ban somebody, ban the Islamists, not ban all Muslims. I just know too many people who wouldn't have been able to come here, would have been categorized as Muslims because, maybe atheists, maybe very, very moderate Muslims, and are good people and good Americans, and they've assimilated. I mean, I remember doing events with Wafa Sultan. Would she have been allowed in? Would Ayn Ali, who's technically a Muslim, not anymore maybe, but was technically a Muslim, would she be allowed in? Do we really want to ban Ayn Ali? Daniel, do you have opinions or considerations on renting versus buying? I mean, yeah, do whatever is cheapest. And that depends on where interest rates are and mortgages. It depends on the supply and demand, relatively speaking, of rents and homes to buy, although that usually fluctuates until it achieves some kind of equilibrium. But I like buying only because your mortgage is tax deductible, your rent is not. Your rent is not. So renting to own is a terrible idea because you can't deduct the rent from your taxes, but you can deduct your mortgage from your taxes. Your interest rate on the mortgage is deductible. That's like the rent. So, yeah, I mean, I like buying using a mortgage. In a world with no tax deductibility of mortgages, which is the right kind of world, I think I'd be indifferent. It would depend on whether owning something made you feel differently about it, how long you plan to stay in the same place, things like that. And then, of course, the other consideration is, are you buying in a place that you believe will see real estate appreciate in value or not? Right? It turned out to be a great deal for me to buy in California, not to rent. I rented and then bought from the person I rented from because appreciation happened. But it's hard to tell. You need at least 20 down, but you can I got, what did I get? I got a second mortgage for 10%, and I borrowed 10% from my parents. So I got zero down because I didn't have any money when I bought my first house. And I had to pay all of them back, right? So my parents lent me money. The bank lent me money twice, first mortgage and second mortgage. And I paid them all back. So, as I said, I'm not afraid of debt. Yeah, I mean, you have to take all of that into consideration. Do you have the money for a down payment, for example? Jennifer says, Yaron, I wanted to tell you that big glass building we saw in Dearborn, next to, it was next to the Ford Museum, is the Ford R&D Center, the new Ford R&D Center. Yeah, it's a huge building, very modern, quite nice, I think. And it was like, it's towards the end of the construction, putting the finishing touches on it. And that's Ford's big, brand new R&D center, gorgeous. And let's hope Ford makes a lot of money, it seems like Donald Trump is trying to make it hard for them. But let's hope they can. All right, everybody. Thank you. Really appreciate the support of everybody, the Super Chatters. Remind you, those of you who'd like to support the show on a regular basis, Patreon is the way to do it, patreon.com. Just put Yaron Brook Show in. I'll be back tomorrow. I think tomorrow we'll do 4:30. So a little later tomorrow because I teach until 4. And I'll see you all then. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.